An abandoned puppy chooses a baby and refuses to let go. Everyone laughs at first, until the dog's strange behavior turns terrifying. No matter what anyone does, he won't move from her side. He growls when she's touched, cries when she sleeps, and guards her like his life depends on it. The father thinks it's just a stubborn stray, until one night the baby goes silent, and the puppy's desperate howl shatters the quiet. What secret does this tiny creature know? Why does he act like he's protecting her from something no one can see? And when the truth finally comes out, will it be a miracle or a heartbreak that no one is ready for? I'd love to know. Where are you watching from? Type it down below, and while you're here, subscribe so you'll always catch the next story. The November wind cut through Harlan Pike's thin jacket as he hurried across the grocery store parking lot, clutching a small bag of essentials: milk, bread, and baby formula. His paycheck from the mail sorting facility hadn't stretched as far as he'd hoped this week. The streetlights cast long shadows across the nearly empty lot, and his breath came out in visible puffs in the freezing air. That's when he heard it, a soft whimper coming from behind a stack of empty boxes near the store's side entrance. Harlan paused, shifting his grocery bag to one arm. The sound came again, weaker this time. Moving closer, he pushed aside a soggy cardboard box to reveal a small puppy, no bigger than a loaf of bread, shivering violently in the cold. Its fur was matted and dirty, a muddy brown color that might have once been golden. The pup's ribs showed through its coat, and its eyes, when they met Harlan's, were filled with a desperate kind of hope. "Hey there, little fella," Harlan said softly, crouching down. The puppy cowered slightly but didn't run. "You're freezing out here." He glanced at his watch, 11:30 at night. The babysitter would be expecting him home soon. He had 8-month-old Maisie to think about, bills to pay, and barely enough space in their small rental house as it was. He couldn't take on a dog right now. He just couldn't. The puppy whimpered again, and Harlan felt something twist in his chest. The temperature was supposed to drop below freezing tonight. "Just for tonight," he muttered, shrugging off his jacket. "That's all. Just until morning." He wrapped the shivering pup in his jacket, trying not to think about what his strict landlord would say. The puppy snuggled into the warmth, pressing against his chest as he carried both it and the groceries to his old sedan. The drive home was quick, with the puppy staying unusually quiet in the passenger seat, watching him with those soulful eyes. Harlan's mind raced with explanations from Mrs. Henderson, the elderly babysitter who lived next door. But when he pulled into his driveway, he saw her lights were already off. She must have fallen asleep in his recliner again, waiting for him. Harlan gathered the puppy and groceries, fumbling with his keys at the front door. "Okay, little guy," he whispered. "We need to be quiet. I'll set you up in the kitchen for tonight, and tomorrow we'll figure out—" The moment he opened the door, the puppy burst from his arms with surprising strength. Harlan's heart jumped into his throat as the dog darted into the house. "No, no, no!" he hissed, dropping the groceries and rushing after it. Mrs. Henderson stirred in the recliner but didn't wake as he passed the living room. The puppy had made a beeline for Maisie's room. Harlan's pulse quickened as he reached the nursery door, pushing it open with trembling hands. All his fears about bringing a strange dog into the house crashed over him at once. But what he saw stopped him in his tracks. The puppy had somehow climbed into Maisie's crib and was now curled around his sleeping daughter like a protective semicircle. The dog's nose was pressed gently against Maisie's side, and its eyes were fixed on Harlan with an intensity that made him shiver. "Come on now," Harlan whispered, reaching for the puppy. "You can't stay in there." The dog's lips pulled back slightly, showing teeth, and a soft but clear growl rumbled from its throat. It wasn't aggressive, more like a warning. The pup's body language remained calm, still curved around Maisie, who slept peacefully. Harlan tried again, this time with more authority. "Listen here, you need to—" The growl came again, slightly louder, and the puppy tucked itself even closer to Maisie. There was something almost desperate in its posture, as if protecting the baby was the most important thing in its world. Harlan stepped back, running a hand through his hair in frustration. This wasn't how tonight was supposed to go. He'd only meant to save the puppy from freezing to death, not acquire a furry bodyguard for his daughter. He watched as the puppy's eyes began to drift closed, its small body still pressed protectively against Maisie. His daughter's face was peaceful, her dark curls spread across the pillow, the tiny birthmark under her right eye visible in the soft glow of her nightlight. The scene before him stirred something deep in his chest, a mixture of worry and wonder. The puppy's behavior was strange, almost unnatural in its immediacy and intensity. Yet there was something about the way it had found Maisie, the gentle but fierce way it had claimed its place beside her, that felt right somehow. Mrs. Henderson's voice made him jump. "Well, would you look at that?" she said softly from the doorway. He hadn't even heard her approach. "I'm sorry," Harlan started to explain. "I found it freezing outside the store, and I only meant to—" She held up a weathered hand to stop him. "Some things don't need explaining, Harlan Pike. Some things just are." Her wise eyes took in the scene before them, the tiny puppy and the baby girl, already inseparable. "Looks to me like that little one knew exactly where it needed to be." Harlan watched as Maisie shifted in her sleep, one small hand coming to rest on the puppy's fur. The dog sighed contentedly, never opening its eyes but nudging slightly closer to his daughter. "I can't keep it," he said, but his voice lacked conviction. "The landlord, the extra expenses. I barely make ends meet as it is." Mrs. Henderson patted his arm. "Sometimes, son, the things we think we can't handle are exactly what we need most." She smiled knowingly. "Besides, I don't think that dog is going anywhere. Not now that it's found its purpose." As if to emphasize her point, the puppy opened one eye to look at them, then closed it again, settling in more firmly against Maisie. The message was clear. This was where it belonged. Harlan sighed, knowing he was fighting a losing battle. He'd have to figure something out with the landlord, maybe pick up some extra shifts at the mail facility. But watching the puppy keeping its protective vigil over his daughter, he felt a warmth spread through his chest that had nothing to do with the house's heating. Mrs. Henderson gathered her things to leave, pausing at the front door. "You know," she said thoughtfully, "sometimes angels come with 4 legs instead of wings." With that cryptic statement, she slipped out into the night, leaving Harlan alone with his thoughts. He returned to the nursery, pulling up the old rocking chair to watch over both his daughter and her unexpected guardian. The puppy's presence seemed to fill a space in the room he hadn't even realized was empty. As he sat there in the quiet darkness, Harlan couldn't shake the feeling that something profound had just happened, something that would change their lives in ways he couldn't yet understand. The night deepened around them, but Harlan remained in his vigil, watching his daughter sleep peacefully with her newfound protector. Outside, the November wind continued to howl. But inside this small room, in this moment, everything felt inexplicably perfectly right. Morning light filtered through the nursery window, casting a soft glow on Maisie's crib. Harlan stood in the doorway, his work uniform still creased from the night shift, watching as the puppy remained faithfully curled around his daughter. He hadn't slept much, his mind wrestling with what to do about their unexpected guest. The sensible thing would be to take it to the shelter when they opened at 9 o'clock. He'd already looked up the address on his phone. The Happy Tales animal shelter was only 15 minutes away. They'd find the puppy a good home, one that could actually afford to keep it. Maisie stirred in her crib, her tiny fingers reaching out to touch the puppy's fur. The dog's eyes opened immediately, alert but gentle. It lifted its head, giving Maisie's hand a soft lick that made her giggle, a pure bell-like sound that filled the whole room. "Dada!" Maisie called out, noticing him in the doorway. Her face lit up with joy as she pointed at the puppy. "Dog, dog!" Harlan couldn't help but smile. "Yeah, sweetheart, that's a dog." He approached the crib carefully, still wary of the puppy's protective instincts from the night before. But this morning, the dog simply wagged its tail, looking between Harlan and Maisie with intelligent eyes. "Well, buddy," Harlan said to the puppy, "guess we should get you some breakfast before—" He couldn't bring himself to finish the sentence about the shelter, not with Maisie's delighted giggles filling the air. In the kitchen, Harlan scrambled some eggs, setting aside a small portion for the puppy. He'd read somewhere that dogs shouldn't have table scraps, but it would have to do for now. The puppy followed them, staying close to Maisie's high chair, as if tethered by an invisible string. "If you're going to hang around," Harlan found himself saying, "we should probably call you something." He watched as the dog delicately ate the eggs from an old plastic bowl. "How about Jasper?" The puppy's ears perked up, and it looked at him with those soulful eyes. Maisie clapped her hands. "Jasper," she attempted, though it came out more like "Ja-pa." A knock at the door made Harlan's stomach tighten. Mr. Roberts, the landlord, always did his morning rounds at 8 o'clock sharp. Through the peephole, Harlan could see the man's familiar scowl. "Just stay quiet," Harlan whispered to Jasper, though he wasn't sure why he was already trying to protect the dog he'd planned to take to the shelter. "Morning, Mr. Roberts," Harlan said, opening the door just enough to block the view inside. "Pike." The landlord's thin lips pressed together. "Had a complaint about barking last night. You wouldn't know anything about that, would you?" Harlan's throat went dry. "No, sir. Must have been from another unit." Mr. Roberts pulled out a piece of paper from his jacket. "Well, seems like a good time to remind you about the HOA pet restrictions. No animals over 20 pounds, and all pets must be registered with the board for approval." He thrust the paper at Harlan. "Direct request from Mrs. Voss herself. She's concerned about maintaining property values." Of course it was Delilah Voss. Harlan's mother-in-law had been trying to find ways to prove him an unfit father ever since Sarah's death. She'd never forgiven her daughter for marrying a mechanic's apprentice, and now she was determined to save her granddaughter from the same mistake. "I understand," Harlan said, taking the paper. "But I don't have any pets, so it's not an issue." A high-pitched bark from inside made them both freeze. Maisie's laughter followed, echoing through the apartment. Mr. Roberts' eyes narrowed. "Is that so?" He tried to peer around Harlan. "Because if you're harboring an unauthorized pet, that's grounds for—" "It's just for today," Harlan cut in quickly. "I'm taking it to the shelter this morning. Found it in the cold last night, that's all." "See that you do," Mr. Roberts said. "Mrs. Voss has been very generous in allowing you to remain here, despite your circumstances. It would be a shame to jeopardize that arrangement." The threat was clear. Delilah Voss owned several units in the complex through her real estate investments. She'd made sure Harlan and Maisie got this apartment when they'd needed to downsize after Sarah's medical bills. But her generosity came with strings that felt more like chains some days. Closing the door, Harlan leaned against it, his heart heavy. Back in the kitchen, Maisie was sharing her breakfast with Jasper, dropping tiny pieces of toast that the puppy gently took from her fingers. The sight should have worried him, a strange dog so close to his baby. But something about their interaction felt natural. Meant to be. Jasper looked up at him. those intelligent eyes seeming to understand the weight of the moment. The puppy moved to sit at Harlan's feet, leaning against his leg as if to say, "I'm here. I'm not going anywhere." The warmth of that simple gesture spread through Harlan's chest, fighting against the cold fear of Delilah's influence. He'd been so alone since Sarah died, trying to be both mother and father to Maisie while working nights and scraping by. Now, watching this abandoned puppy show such devotion to his daughter, he felt something he hadn't experienced in a long time. Hope. "What are we going to do, buddy?" he asked softly, reaching down to scratch behind Jasper's ears. The puppy pressed harder against his leg, and Maisie let out another peal of laughter that seemed to chase away the shadows of the morning's confrontation. The shelter would be opening soon. The sensible thing would be to take Jasper there, avoid trouble with the HOA, keep his head down, and just survive like he'd been doing. But as he watched his daughter's face light up every time Jasper nuzzled her hand, Harlan knew he was already fighting a losing battle with his heart. Mrs. Henderson's words from the night before echoed in his mind. Sometimes the things we think we can't handle are exactly what we need most. Looking at Jasper's torn ear and grateful eyes, at Maisie's complete comfort with this creature that had appeared in their lives like a guardian angel, Harlan felt the first stirrings of defiance against the careful boundaries Delilah Voss had drawn around their lives. The clock on the wall ticked closer to 9 o'clock, but Harlan made no move to get Jasper ready for a trip to the shelter. Instead, he sat down at the kitchen table, watching his daughter and her newfound protector, feeling an unexpected warmth fill their small home, despite the November chill outside and the storm he knew was coming. The certified letter arrived on a Tuesday morning. Harlan knew something was wrong the moment he saw the return address from Whitman and Associates, Legal Services. His hands trembled as he tore open the envelope, and the words on the page made his heart stop. Notice of emergency custody hearing in the eye. Matter of Maisie Sarah Pike. Petitioner, Delilah Elizabeth Voss. The legal document blurred before his eyes as he sank into the kitchen chair. Jasper, who had been dozing near Maisie's playmat, immediately rose and padded over, resting his head on Harlan's knee. The puppy's warmth couldn't chase away the cold fear spreading through his chest. Grave concerns about the child's safety and well-being, unauthorized animal of unknown origin, potential health hazards, immediate intervention required. The words jumped off the page like accusations. Delilah had wasted no time after learning about Jasper. 2 weeks. They'd only had the dog for 2 weeks, and already his mother-in-law was trying to use it to take Maisie away. "Daddy?" Maisie's small voice drew his attention. She had pulled herself up using the coffee table, her dark curls, so like Sarah's, falling in her eyes. Jasper immediately moved to stand beside her, his sturdy frame providing extra support as she took tentative steps. "It's okay, sweetheart," Harlan managed, though his voice cracked. "Everything's going to be okay." But the words felt hollow. The hearing was scheduled for Friday, just 3 days away. His mind raced through options he didn't have. He couldn't afford a lawyer, not after Sarah's medical bills. The night shift at the mail center barely covered rent and daycare. As if reading his thoughts, there was a sharp knock at the door. Mr. Roberts stood there, another notice in hand. "Mr. Pike, given the circumstances, I'm required to inform you that you're in violation of your lease agreement. You have 48 hours to remove the unauthorized animal or face eviction proceedings." Harlan's world was crumbling. "Please, I just need some time to—" "Time isn't something you have, Mr. Pike. Mrs. Voss was quite clear about the consequences." That evening, after putting Maisie to bed, Harlan began desperately searching online for any information about lost dogs in the area. He posted Jasper's picture on local pet forums called veterinary offices, and even printed "found dog" flyers to post around the grocery store where he'd discovered him. But each time he looked at Jasper, the dog's devotion to Maisie was undeniable. The puppy had taken to sleeping beneath her crib, rising at the slightest sound. He seemed to know when Maisie was about to cry before she made a sound, gently nudging Harlan awake minutes before she needed attention. Most remarkably, Maisie had started sleeping through the night, something she hadn't done since Sarah passed away. The baby monitor remained quiet as long as Jasper was near, as if his presence alone soothed whatever nighttime fears had plagued her before. Wednesday night brought another revelation. Harlan woke to urgent whining from Jasper. The dog was pawing at his arm, more agitated than he'd ever seen him. Following the puppy to Maisie's room, Harlan found his daughter lying unusually still, her breathing shallow and irregular. "Maisie?" Fear gripped him as he touched her chest. Her heartbeat was steady, but something wasn't right. Jasper whimpered, nosing at Maisie's face until she stirred, taking a deep, gasping breath before settling back into normal breathing. Harlan spent the rest of the night researching infant sleep apnea, his mind racing with possibilities. Could Jasper somehow sense when Maisie stopped breathing? Was this why the dog had been so adamant about staying close to her from the very first night? Thursday morning brought Mrs. Chen from next door, wringing her hands as she spoke to Harlan in the hallway. "I heard about the custody hearing," she said softly. "My Henry, he works at the courthouse. He said Mrs. Voss has hired Whitman himself, top family court lawyer in the state." Harlan's stomach churned. Of course, Delilah would hire the best. She'd always used her money as a weapon, trying to prove that her wealth made her more qualified to raise Maisie than Harlan's love and dedication. "The dog," Mrs. Chen continued, glancing at Jasper through the doorway. "Maybe if you could prove he's trained, something special about him?" Harlan watched as Jasper guided Maisie away from the heating vent she'd been crawling toward, redirecting her toward her toys instead. The dog's intelligence was obvious, but without papers or proper training certificates, would anyone believe his instincts about Maisie's breathing were more than coincidence? That afternoon, Harlan took both Maisie and Jasper to the local veterinarian, spending money he couldn't afford on a full examination. Dr. Martinez listened intently to Harlan's observations about Jasper's behavior with Maisie. "There are cases of dogs being naturally attuned to medical conditions," she explained, checking Jasper's torn ear. "Some can detect seizures, changes in blood sugar, even certain types of cancer, but proving it usually requires extensive testing and certification." "I don't have time for that," Harlan said, watching Maisie sleeping peacefully in her carrier, Jasper standing guard beside her. "The hearing is tomorrow." Dr. Martinez's eyes softened with sympathy. "I can write a letter explaining my professional observations of their bond, but without formal training documentation." She trailed off, leaving the implication hanging. That night, as Harlan prepared for his shift at the mail center, Mrs. Henderson from the daycare offered to watch Maisie and Jasper. "That dog hasn't left her side once when she's here," she said firmly. "I've been doing this 30 years, and I've never seen anything like it. You tell that judge that taking either one of them away would be cruel." Harlan's throat tightened with emotion. "Thank you," he managed. "But Delilah Voss doesn't care about cruel. She only cares about control." He worked his shift with leaden hands, sorting mail while his mind raced through arguments he could present to the judge. How could he make them understand that Jasper wasn't just a stray dog? That somehow, against all logic, this abandoned puppy had become Maisie's guardian angel? When he returned home in the early hours of Friday morning, he found Jasper once again alerting him to Maisie's irregular breathing. This time, Harlan recorded it on his phone. The dog's clear distress, the way he woke Maisie, her gasping breath, and the calm that followed. As dawn broke on the day of the hearing, Harlan gathered the little evidence he had. Dr. Martinez's letter, Mrs. Henderson's written statement, the video from that morning, and a dozen photographs showing Jasper's gentle guidance of Maisie's first steps. "I promise," he whispered to both his daughter and the dog who'd become her protector. "I won't let anyone separate us, whatever it takes." But as he dressed Maisie in her best outfit, the one Sarah had picked out months before she passed away, Harlan couldn't shake the terror that by the end of the day, his little family might be torn apart by the very person who should have been supporting them. Maisie's grandmother, Delilah Voss, armed with her expensive lawyer and her determination to prove that money mattered more than love. Jasper pressed against his leg, those soulful eyes seeming to say he understood everything at stake. The puppy's presence had brought warmth and security to their home, had potentially saved Maisie's life, and had given Harlan hope when he needed it most. Now, they would have to fight to keep that precious gift intact. After leaving Dr. Martinez's office, Harlan remembered a name that Sarah had mentioned during her pregnancy, Maren Hale, a pediatric respiratory therapist who had helped with her prenatal care. With trembling fingers, he dialed the hospital's respiratory department. "This is Maren," came a warm, professional voice. "Ms. Hale, this is Harlan Pike. Sarah Williams was my wife. You helped her before." "Of course, Mr. Pike. I remember Sarah." Maren's voice softened. "How is your little girl doing?" Harlan explained the situation with Jasper, his voice growing urgent as he described the dog's behavior. "I know it sounds crazy, but he won't leave her side. I'm worried. Could he be dangerous? The way he watches her breathing?" "Would you be comfortable if I came by to observe them together?" Maren asked. "Sometimes animals can sense things we can't." An hour later, Maren sat cross-legged on Harlan's living room floor, watching Jasper guide Maisie away from the coffee table corner. Her clear blue eyes missed nothing as the dog gently herded the baby toward safer territory. "His body language is fascinating," Maren noted, scribbling in a small notebook. "See how he maintains constant awareness of her position? That's not aggression, it's vigilance." Harlan sank into his worn armchair. "But why? He's just a stray I found." "Dogs can have remarkable intuition about medical conditions," Maren explained, her auburn hair falling forward as she leaned to watch Jasper more closely. "There are documented cases of untrained dogs detecting seizures, blood sugar changes, even certain cancers. Their sense of smell is thousands of times more sensitive than ours." She turned to face Harlan directly. "Has Maisie had any breathing difficulties? Any concerns during her checkups?" "The pediatrician said everything was normal," Harlan replied, but uncertainty crept into his voice. "Though sometimes, at night, when Jasper wakes me, would you mind if I brought some monitoring equipment tomorrow, just to observe her breathing patterns while she sleeps?" Harlan nodded gratefully, relief flooding through him at having someone take his concerns seriously. That night, after putting Maisie to bed, Harlan couldn't sleep. He sat in the darkness of his bedroom, watching the baby monitor. Jasper had taken his usual position beside Maisie's crib, sitting perfectly still like a sentinel. Around 2 o'clock in the morning, something changed. Jasper's ears perked forward, his body becoming rigid with attention. Harlan watched, heart pounding, as the dog stared intently at Maisie's sleeping form. There was something unnatural about his stillness, as if every muscle was poised for action. Harlan crept to the nursery door. In the dim nightlight, he could see Jasper's eyes fixed on Maisie's chest, tracking each breath with laser focus. The dog's concentration was so intense, it made the hair on Harlan's arms stand up. Minutes ticked by. Jasper didn't move, didn't blink, just watched. Watched and waited, as though guarding against something only he could sense. Harlan slid down the wall, sitting in the hallway where he could see both his daughter and her mysterious protector. He thought about Sarah, about how she'd always said everything happened for a reason. At the time, he'd dismissed it as simple faith, but now, the night stretched on, and still Jasper maintained his vigil. Occasionally his ears would twitch at some imperceptible sound, or his nose would work rapidly, testing the air. But his eyes never left Maisie's sleeping form. Around 4 a.m, Mrs. Chen's cat yowled in the hallway outside. Any other dog would have barked, or at least shown interest, but Jasper remained focused solely on his charge, as though nothing else in the world existed. Harlan's phone buzzed softly, a text from Marin. "I'll bring the equipment by at 9. Try to keep notes on any unusual behavior you notice." He typed back one-handed, describing Jasper's current stance. Her response came quickly. "That's exactly the kind of observation we need. Dogs can often detect subtle changes in breathing patterns that our equipment might miss." Dawn began to creep through the windows, painting the nursery walls in soft grays and pinks. Only then did Jasper finally relax, settling down on his belly but maintaining his position beside the crib. Harlan realized he'd spent the entire night watching the dog watch his daughter. The morning brought new worries about the custody, hearing, but something had shifted in Harlan's perspective. Jasper wasn't just a stray anymore. He was standing between Maisie and some danger they couldn't yet understand. The thought of Delilah separating them now seemed even more terrifying. As he prepared Maisie's morning bottle, Harlan heard familiar footsteps in the hallway. Marin had arrived early, carrying a black bag of medical equipment and wearing an expression of quiet determination. "Tell me everything you observed last night," she said, setting up a small monitor beside Maisie's crib. "Every detail matters." Harlan described Jasper's unwavering vigilance, while Marin listened intently, her professional demeanor softening as she watched the dog gently nuzzle Maisie's hand. "We'll need more data," she said finally, "but I've seen enough to know this isn't ordinary behavior. There's something here worth investigating, something that could be crucial for Maisie's health." She turned to face Harlan directly. "Would you be willing to let me testify at the custody hearing? As a medical professional, I might be able to help the judge understand why separating them could be dangerous." Harlan nodded, throat tight with gratitude. For the first time since receiving Delilah's custody threat, he felt a glimmer of hope. Maybe Sarah had been right after all. Maybe everything did happen for a reason, even finding a shivering puppy on a frozen night. The afternoon sun cast long shadows across Maisie's nursery as Harlan watched his daughter sleeping peacefully in her crib. Jasper maintained his usual position, pressed against the crib's bars, his eyes never leaving the baby. The monitoring equipment Marin had set up earlier beeped softly in the background, its steady rhythm almost hypnotic. Harlan rubbed his tired eyes, the lack of sleep from the previous night catching up with him. "Come on, boy," he whispered, reaching for Jasper's collar. "Let's give her some space." The change in Jasper was instant and alarming. The dog's lips pulled back, showing teeth that had never before been bared at Harlan. A low growl rumbled in his chest, different from his usual protective warning sounds. "Jasper, what's gotten into you?" Harlan's voice held more confusion than anger as he reached again for the dog's collar. This time, Jasper snapped. His teeth caught Harlan's wrist, not breaking the skin but delivering a clear warning bite. Before Harlan could react, Jasper began barking frantically, his voice sharp with urgency. The sound echoed off the nursery walls, unlike anything Harlan had heard from him before. "Quiet down," Harlan hissed, worried about the neighbors complaining. But Jasper's barks grew more desperate, his body trembling with tension as he stared at Maisie. Something about the dog's panic made Harlan look closer at his daughter. His heart stopped. Maisie's chest wasn't moving. "Maisie?" His voice cracked as he reached into the crib. Her skin felt warm, but her little body was terrifyingly still. "Maisie, baby, breathe!" With shaking hands, Harlan snatched his phone from his pocket, dialing 911 while lifting Maisie from her crib. Jasper's barking suddenly stopped, replaced by high-pitched whines as he circled Harlan's feet. 911, what's your emergency?" The operator's voice seemed to come from very far away. "My baby's not breathing," Harlan managed to say, laying Maisie on the changing table. "She's 8 months old. Please, send help." "Sir, I'm dispatching emergency services now. Do you know infant CPR?" Yes, I took a class." Harlan's hands were trembling as he tilted Maisie's head back slightly, checking her airway. Jasper stood on his hind legs, front paws on the changing table, watching intently. "Give 2 gentle rescue breaths," the operator instructed. "Watch for chest rise." Harlan covered Maisie's mouth and nose with his mouth, giving a gentle puff of air. Her chest rose slightly. Another breath. "Please, baby, please." Suddenly, Maisie gave a small gasp. Her chest began to move on its own, color returning to her face. Harlan's legs nearly gave out with relief. "She's breathing," he choked out to the operator. "She's breathing again." "Keep watching her closely. Emergency services are 3 minutes away." Those 3 minutes felt like 3 hours. Harlan held Maisie against his chest, counting each breath, while Jasper pressed against his legs, still whining softly. When the paramedics arrived, their heavy boots thundering up the stairs, the dog didn't even growl at the strangers. He simply moved aside, watching them examine Maisie with the same intense focus he'd shown all along. The ride to the emergency room was a blur. Harlan sat in the back of the ambulance, holding Maisie's tiny hand, while the paramedics monitored her vitals. They asked him questions he could barely process, about her health history, about what had happened. He found himself mentioning Jasper's behavior, the way the dog had tried to warn him. At the hospital, they whisked Maisie away for tests, leaving Harlan alone in the waiting room. He stared at the small red mark on his wrist where Jasper had nipped him, understanding now what the dog had been trying to tell him. "Harlan?" He looked up to see Marin hurrying toward him, still wearing her scrubs from her shift at the children's respiratory clinic. Someone must have called her. "How is she?" Marin asked, sitting beside him. "They're running tests." His voice sounded hollow even to his own ears. "She just stopped breathing. If Jasper hadn't—" "Tell me exactly what happened," Marin said, her professional demeanor taking over. "Everything you noticed, especially about Jasper's behavior." Harlan described the dog's sudden aggression, the frantic barking, how it had made him look more closely at Maisie. As he spoke, Marin's expression grew increasingly focused. "And this isn't the first time Jasper's shown unusual attention to her breathing?" "No," Harlan said, remembering the previous night's vigil. "He watches her all the time, especially when she's sleeping. It's like he's waiting for something." Before Marin could respond, a doctor appeared in the waiting room doorway. "Mr. Pike?" They followed her to a small consultation room, where monitors showed readings from Maisie's tests. The doctor, a woman with kind eyes and gray-streaked hair, introduced herself as Dr. Chen. "Your daughter appears to be experiencing episodes of silent apnea," she explained. "It's a condition where breathing stops temporarily during sleep, but without the gasping or struggling we typically associate with breathing difficulties. This makes it particularly dangerous because it can be hard to detect without monitoring equipment." Harlan felt the room spin slightly. "But she's going to be okay?" "With proper monitoring and treatment, yes," Dr. Chen assured him. "We'll want to keep her overnight for observation and set up a sleep study to determine the best course of action." "The dog knew," Marin said suddenly. Both Harlan and Dr. Chen turned to look at her. The behavior Mr. Pike has been describing, the constant watching, the reaction to changes in breathing patterns, it's consistent with what we see in medical alert dogs. Some dogs can detect subtle changes in human physiology that even our equipment sometimes misses. Dr. Chen nodded thoughtfully. I've read studies about dogs detecting various medical conditions. Their sense of smell allows them to pick up on chemical changes in the body that we can't perceive. So Jasper... Harlan's voice trailed off as the realization hit him. The dog hadn't been acting out of aggression when he bit Harlan's wrist. He'd been desperately trying to get his attention, to warn him that Maisie was in danger. He may very well have saved her life, Marin said softly. Silent apnea can be fatal if not caught in time. The fact that he alerted you to the episode, that he's been monitoring her all along. She turned to Dr. Chen. Would you be willing to document this in Maisie's medical records? The dog's role in detecting her condition could be crucial information. The doctor nodded, making notes in her tablet. I'll have the full report ready by tomorrow. Mr. Pike, would you like to see your daughter now? She's stable and sleeping comfortably. In Maisie's hospital room, watching his daughter's chest rise and fall beneath the monitoring equipment, Harlan thought about Jasper waiting at home. The dog who had appeared on a frozen night, who had somehow known exactly where he was needed most. I can help you with the custody hearing, Marin said quietly, standing beside him. This changes everything. Jasper isn't just a stray dog. He's protecting Maisie in a way none of us could. We can prove that now. Harlan reached out to touch Maisie's small hand, overwhelmed by how close he'd come to losing her, and by the mysterious ways love sometimes appeared to save us, even in the form of a shivering puppy on a cold November night. The morning sun filtered through the hospital room's blinds as Maisie slept peacefully in her crib, the steady beep of monitors providing a reassuring rhythm. Harlan hadn't left her side all night, his hand resting protectively on the rail of her hospital crib. Dark circles shadowed his eyes, but there was new determination in his posture. Marin entered quietly, carrying 2 paper cups of coffee. She handed one to Harlan, who accepted it gratefully. Dr. Chen finished her report, she said softly, pulling up a chair. She's documented everything about Jasper's role in detecting Maisie's condition. The medical evidence is strong, Harlan. This could change everything. Harlan took a long sip of coffee, his hands trembling slightly. I keep thinking about what could have happened if Jasper hadn't been there, if I hadn't found him that night. But you did, Marin reminded him gently. And now we need to make sure they stay together. I've already written my professional statement about Jasper's behavior patterns and their correlation with medical alert dogs. Dr. Chen's report backs it up with clinical evidence. A soft knock at the door interrupted them. Evelyn Shore, their neighbor, poked her head in, her gray eyes bright with concern. I came as soon as I heard, she whispered, approaching Maisie's crib. How is she? Stable, Harlan answered. They're monitoring her breathing, but she should be able to come home tomorrow. Evelyn nodded, then pulled out her phone. I have something you need to see. I've been keeping an eye on things. You know how I am with my window facing your yard. She smiled apologetically. I started recording Jasper's behavior about a week ago. Something about the way he watched over Maisie caught my attention. She showed them several video clips. Jasper alertly watching Maisie through the window, racing to her room whenever she stirred, positioning himself by her crib during nap times. This could be invaluable, Marin said, leaning forward. Evelyn, would you be willing to provide a formal statement? Combined with the medical documentation, it shows a clear pattern of protective behavior. Of course, Evelyn replied firmly. That dog is a guardian angel if I ever saw one, and... She hesitated, glancing at Harlan. You should know that Delilah Voss has been making calls to the HOA board. I overheard her on my morning walk, talking about emergency measures to enforce the no pets rule. Harlan's jaw tightened. She won't stop until she takes everything from me. Not everything, Marin said, her voice steady. Not while we're here. The three of us, we can fight this. Delilah has influence, yes, but we have truth on our side. And now we have proof. A nurse entered to check Maisie's vitals, smiling at the sleeping baby. Her oxygen levels are perfect, she reported. The doctor will be in soon to discuss her home monitoring plan. After the nurse left, Evelyn touched Harlan's arm. I'll head to the notary today, get my statement officially documented, and I'll talk to some of the other neighbors. People should know what's really happening here. Thank you, Harlan said, his voice rough with emotion. Both of you. I never expected. That's what community is supposed to be, Marin replied. Not HOA rules and social pressure, but people helping people. Speaking of which, she pulled out her laptop. Let's start organizing our documentation. We'll need everything in order for both the custody hearing and any HOA challenges. They worked quietly for the next hour, Marin typing up their collected evidence, while Evelyn added details to her observations. Harlan split his attention between their work and Maisie's peaceful sleep, his heart both heavy and hopeful. The calm was broken by the sharp click of heels in the hallway. Delilah Voss appeared in the doorway, her silver hair perfectly styled despite the early hour, her diamond brooch catching the morning light. What is the meaning of this? She demanded, waving a paper. I've just received notice that you're contesting my custody petition with some ridiculous claim about a stray dog saving my granddaughter's life. It's not a claim, Mrs. Voss. Marin stood, her professional demeanor firmly in place. It's documented medical fact. Jasper detected Maisie's silent apnea, a potentially fatal condition. His presence quite literally saved her life. Absurd, Delilah scoffed. And who might you be? Marin Hale, pediatric respiratory therapist. I've provided professional testimony regarding Jasper's medical alert capabilities, which have been confirmed by Maisie's doctors. Delilah's eyes narrowed. This changes nothing. That house is still no place for my granddaughter, and that animal is a liability. In fact, she smiled coldly. The HOA board has called an emergency meeting for this afternoon. We'll be implementing immediate action on unauthorized pets, with substantial fines and expedited eviction procedures. We're ready for that too, Evelyn spoke up, surprising everyone with the steel in her voice. I've documented everything, Delilah. Your phone calls, your threats, your manipulation of the board. Do you really want all that coming out in court? Color rose in Delilah's cheeks. How dare you! I am protecting my granddaughter's interests. No, Harlan said quietly, standing beside Maisie's crib. You're protecting your pride, your reputation. But Maisie needs protection of a different kind, and Jasper provides that. He sensed what none of us could see, and he refused to leave her vulnerable. That's the kind of devotion she deserves. This isn't over, Delilah snapped, turning on her heel. You'll be hearing from my lawyers, and the HOA board. After she left, a heavy silence fell over the room, broken only by the steady beep of Maisie's monitors. Well, Evelyn said finally, I believe that went rather well, all things considered. Marin nodded, already typing. And it gave us more documentation. Her threats will only strengthen our case. Harlan looked between these two women who had become unexpected allies, then down at his sleeping daughter. The morning sun caught the faint pink birthmark under her right eye, making it glow like a tiny rose petal. Thank you, he said again, his voice thick with gratitude, for standing with us. Family isn't always about blood, Evelyn said softly. Sometimes it's about who shows up when you need them most. Marin closed her laptop with quiet determination. We've got your back, Harlan. All of us. Now let's make sure both your children get to stay home where they belong. Both? Harlan asked. Marin smiled. Maisie and Jasper. After all this, how could they be anything but family? Morning sunlight streamed through the courthouse windows, casting long shadows across the polished floor. Harlan straightened his borrowed tie, his calloused fingers unfamiliar with the silky material. The weight of the manila folder in his hands felt like his daughter's future. Deep breaths, Marin whispered beside him. She looked professional and composed in her navy blazer, her auburn hair neatly pinned back. We have everything we need. On his other side, Evelyn clutched her phone, which held weeks of carefully documented footage. Her cardigan was freshly pressed for the occasion, and her gray eyes held steady determination. The door to courtroom 3 opened, and the bailiff called their case number. Harlan's heart hammered as they filed into the wood-paneled room. Across the aisle, Delilah sat ramrod straight beside her expensive lawyer, her silver hair gleaming under the fluorescent lights. Judge Matthews, a woman with kind eyes and silver-streaked dark hair, reviewed the papers before her. "This is an unusual petition," she began. "Mr. Pike, you're requesting service animal status for a dog you found as a stray?" "Yes, Your Honor." Harlan's voice came out steadier than he expected. "Jasper has demonstrated an extraordinary ability to detect my daughter's silent apnea episodes before they become dangerous." "I have documentation supporting this claim." Marin stepped forward, presenting her credentials and detailed observations. "As a pediatric respiratory therapist, I've witnessed Jasper's alerts firsthand. His behavior is consistent with trained medical alert dogs, though his ability appears to be instinctive rather than taught." The judge studied the medical records. "And the video evidence?" Evelyn approached with her phone. "I live next door to the Pikes, Your Honor. I began recording Jasper's behavior because it was so remarkable. He would become agitated and bark specifically when Maisie's breathing changed. Here's footage from 3 separate incidents." The courtroom fell silent as they watched. On screen, Jasper paced anxiously by Maisie's crib, then began barking sharply. Moments later, monitors confirmed the baby's oxygen levels dropping. In each clip, his warnings came before the medical equipment registered a problem. "The dog's response time averaged 45 seconds before our most sensitive monitors detected an issue," Marin added. "In cases of silent apnea, those seconds can be critical." Delilah's lawyer stood. "Your Honor, while this may be impressive, it doesn't change the fact that this is an unauthorized pet in a strict HOA community. There are proper channels for obtaining a trained service animal." "Which can take months or years," Harlan countered, "and cost thousands of dollars we don't have. Jasper is already doing the job, doing it well, and my daughter's life depends on him." Judge Matthews removed her reading glasses. "Mrs. Voss, your concerns about proper procedures are noted. However, the Americans with Disabilities Act doesn't specify that service animals must come from traditional channels. The key factors are the animal's behavior and the service provided." She turned to Harlan. "Mr. Pike, I'm granting a 90-day trial period. During this time, Jasper will be officially recognized as a service animal in training. You'll need to document all alerts and have them verified by medical professionals." Relief flooded through Harlan's chest. "Thank you, Your Honor." "Additionally," the judge continued, "the HOA is hereby ordered to suspend any pet-related eviction proceedings during this period. Ms. Hale, will you oversee the documentation process?" "Gladly, Your Honor," Marin replied. Back home that evening, Harlan surveyed his transformed living room. New monitors blinked steadily beside Maisie's play area. A charging station for the portable oxygen sensor sat on the coffee table. Jasper's bed, now officially labeled Service Animal Rest Area, occupied the corner with the best view of both Maisie's crib and the main living space. Marin helped him arrange the last of the equipment, while Evelyn cooed at Maisie, who was attempting to roll over on her playmat. Jasper watched attentively from his post, his golden-brown coat catching the late afternoon light. "Remember," Marin said, showing him how to properly position the pulse oximeter. "We need to record every alert, even false positives, though honestly I haven't seen him give a single false alarm yet." "It's like he just knows," Evelyn marveled, watching Jasper's ears perk up at Maisie's slight cough. The dog moved closer, head tilted, listening intently until the baby's breathing evened out again. "Some things can't be explained by science alone," Marin said softly. "Sometimes you just have to have faith." Harlan knelt beside Jasper, running his hand over the dog's torn ear. "Thank you," he whispered, "for choosing us, for choosing her." Jasper leaned into his touch briefly before returning his attention to Maisie. His dedication was unwavering, his purpose clear. In that moment, Harlan realized that maybe this wasn't just about saving Maisie. Maybe this was about saving all of them, bringing together this unlikely family of broken pieces that somehow fit perfectly together. "I've set up a shared online document for all of us to log observations," Marin explained, showing them the spreadsheet on her tablet. "Date, time, type of alert, oxygen readings, response taken, everything we need to prove Jasper's reliability." "And I've got the security cameras adjusted," Evelyn added. "They'll catch any nighttime alerts too." Harlan looked around at his home, now filled with beeping machines and tangled cords. But instead of feeling clinical or chaotic, it felt like hope. Each monitor was a safeguard, each cord a lifeline, and at the center of it all was Jasper, the stray who had become their guardian angel. Maisie squealed with delight as she finally completed her role, ending up face-to-face with Jasper. The dog's tail wagged gently as he gave her nose a soft lick, making her giggle. The sound echoed through the room, a perfect counterpoint to the steady rhythm of the monitors. "Looks like someone's celebrating already," Evelyn smiled, adjusting her cardigan. "You know, I haven't seen her this happy since Jasper arrived," Harlan finished. He watched as his daughter reached for the dog's fur, her tiny fingers grasping with complete trust. Jasper stayed perfectly still, allowing her exploration while maintaining his protective vigilance. Marin checked the oxygen readings one last time. "Everything's perfect," she reported, "both the technical equipment and the natural kind." She nodded toward Jasper with a smile. As the evening light faded, casting long shadows across the monitor-lit room, Harlan felt a peace he hadn't known in months. Yes, there would be more challenges ahead. The trial period to complete, Delilah's opposition to manage, and countless nights of worry. But for now, in this moment, his home felt complete. Jasper settled into his new bed, positioning himself for optimal view of Maisie's crib. His presence was both gentle and fierce, a guardian who had appeared on a frozen night and transformed their lives with unwavering loyalty and inexplicable wisdom. The monitors blinked steadily, their soft green lights a testament to modern medicine. But it was Jasper's warm brown eyes, ever watchful, that truly made Harlan feel his daughter was safe. Science and faith, technology and instinct, all working together to protect one precious life. Over the next 2 weeks, Jasper proved himself with unwavering reliability. Each night, his alerts came with perfect precision, sometimes minutes before the monitors caught any change in Maisie's breathing. The logbook filled with entry after entry, each one a testament to his life-saving instincts. "Another clear night," Harlan noted one morning, checking the observation sheets while Marin reviewed the overnight data. Sunlight streamed through the kitchen window, casting a warm glow over the scattered papers and coffee mugs on the table. "His timing is incredible," Marin said, tucking a loose strand of auburn hair behind her ear. "Look at this pattern. He alerted at 2:15 ante-meridium, and the oxygen drop registered at 217 antimeridium. He's giving us precious extra minutes every time. Harlan watched as she bent over the charts, her dedication to Maisie's care evident in every careful notation. Something warm stirred in his chest, different from the constant worry he'd carried for so long. In the living room, Maisie sat in her bouncy chair, squealing with delight as Jasper performed his morning inspection. The dog circled her carefully, pausing to sniff her breath, then settled at her feet with watchful contentment. "You know," Marin said softly, "I've never seen anything like this in all my years of practice. The way he anticipates her needs." "Like he was meant to find us," Harlan finished, their eyes meeting over the rim of his coffee cup. The morning light caught the gold flecks in Marine's blue eyes, and Harlan found himself noticing how her presence had become as natural as breathing in his home. She stopped by most mornings now, officially to check the monitoring equipment, but their conversations had grown beyond medical charts and oxygen levels. "Dad duty calls," he said, hearing Maisie's hungry whimpers. As he prepared her bottle, Marin moved to the living room, kneeling beside the bouncy chair. "Good morning, sweet girl," she cooed, and Maisie reached for her with trusting hands. Jasper shifted slightly, making room for Marin while maintaining his protective position. Harlan watched them from the kitchen. His daughter, the dedicated therapist who had become so much more than a medical professional, and the loyal dog who had changed everything. For the first time since losing his wife, he allowed himself to imagine a future filled with more than just survival. Later that afternoon, as Marin gathered her things to leave, she paused at the door. "The trial data is looking really strong, Harlan. I think we're building an ironclad case for Jasper's necessity." "I couldn't have done any of this without you," he said, meaning far more than just the medical documentation. She smiled, a slight blush coloring her cheeks. "It's been my pleasure. Really." After she left, Harlan sat on the floor beside Maisie's playmat, watching her reach for colorful stacking rings while Jasper supervised. The constant beep of monitors had become a comforting rhythm, a technological harmony accompanying their daily life. But across town, in her meticulously decorated study, Delilah Voss was not pleased with these developments. She sat at her mahogany desk, reviewing the photos her private investigator had provided, images of Marin's frequent visits, of medical equipment being delivered, of Jasper's constant presence. "A circus of sentimentality," she muttered, her diamond brooch catching the light as she straightened in her chair. "This is no way to raise a child of the Voss family." She picked up her phone, manicured fingers dialing her lawyer's number. "It's time," she said when he answered. "I want you to prepare the final paperwork. We're going to end this charade once and for all." The silver-framed photo on her desk showed her daughter, Maisie's mother, at her debutante ball, perfect and polished in white silk. Next to it lay a stack of documents highlighting every building code violation, every potential safety hazard in Harlan's modest home. "I'll save you from this, darling," she whispered to Maisie's image in another photo. "I'll give you the life you deserve." Back at Harlan's house, the afternoon sun painted long shadows across the living room floor. Maisie had fallen asleep in her playpen, Jasper alert, but relaxed beside her. Harlan allowed himself to sink into his armchair, feeling a peace he hadn't known in months. He didn't see the camera lens catching glimpses through his kitchen window, didn't notice the careful documentation of every wire, every cord, every potential hazard that Delilah would soon use against him. For now, in this moment, he simply watched his daughter sleep, guarded by her faithful protector, and dared to hope that the worst was behind them. The wind howled outside Harlan's windows, rattling the glass as ice pellets tapped against the panes. Inside, the house was warm and quiet, with only the soft beeping of Maisie's monitors breaking the silence. Jasper lay curled beside her crib, his eyes half closed but alert. A sharp knock at the door made Harlan jump. Through the frosted glass, he could make out several dark figures huddled against the storm. His stomach clenched as he recognized Mr. Patterson, the landlord, among them. "Mr. Pike," Patterson said when Harlan opened the door, snow swirling into the entryway, "we need to discuss an urgent matter." Behind him stood two men in uniform, bearing the HOA logo, and a woman clutching a thick folder of papers. "Now, in this weather?" Harlan's voice cracked with disbelief. "We have documentation of multiple violations," the woman stated, her tone clipped, "including an unauthorized pet that poses a safety risk." Harlan's heart pounded. "That dog is a medical necessity. We have court approval." "Temporary approval," Patterson corrected, looking uncomfortable but determined. "And Mrs. Voss has brought several safety concerns to our attention. The wires, the medical equipment." "Those monitors keep my daughter alive," Harlan protested, but the HOA officials were already pushing past him. When they approached Maisie's room, Jasper rose to his feet, a low growl rumbling in his throat. The dog's hackles raised as one of the men reached for his collar. "Don't touch him," Harlan warned, moving to stand between them and Jasper. "He's trained to protect her. You can't just—" "We have authorization to remove the animal," the woman stated, producing more papers. "If you resist, we'll be forced to call the authorities." Cold air swept through the house as the front door remained open, making Maisie stir in her sleep. Jasper's growl deepened, his body rigid with tension. "Please," Harlan begged, looking at Patterson. "You know about Maisie's condition. Jasper alerts us when she stops breathing. You can't take him." But Patterson wouldn't meet his eyes. "My hands are tied, Pike. The board's decision is final." The second HOA officer produced a catch pole, and Jasper backed against Maisie's crib, his teeth bared. The noise woke Maisie, who began to cry, her breath coming in sharp, distressed gasps. "Stop!" Harlan shouted, lunging for his daughter as the monitoring equipment began to sound its warning. "She's not getting enough air!" But the officers were focused on subduing Jasper, who dodged the catch pole, snapping at it while trying to stay near Maisie. The chaos only increased her distress, her small face turning red as she struggled to breathe in the cold air rushing through the house. Harlan cradled Maisie, trying to shield her from the draft while reaching for her emergency oxygen. "You're making it worse! Get out!" "Control your animal, Mr. Pike," the woman ordered sharply, "or we'll have no choice but to call animal control." Jasper let out a series of sharp barks, desperately trying to alert them to Maisie's deteriorating condition. But the officers saw only aggression, and one of them finally managed to loop the catch pole around his neck. "No," Harlan cried, torn between helping Jasper and tending to Maisie, whose lips were taking on a bluish tinge. The monitor's beeping became more urgent, its warning lights flashing red in the dim room. Through the open door, he could see a black luxury car parked across the street, its headlights cutting through the swirling snow. Behind the wheel sat Delilah Voss, watching the scene unfold with grim satisfaction. Jasper fought against the pole, his nails scrabbling on the hardwood as they dragged him toward the door. His eyes never left Maisie, and his barks turned to desperate whines as he sensed her distress. "Mrs. Voss planned this," Harlan said, realization dawning as he struggled to position the oxygen mask on Maisie's face. "She waited for the storm, when no one could help us." Patterson shifted uncomfortably, but the HOA officers remained unmoved. "The regulations are clear, Mr. Pike. You were warned about keeping unauthorized pets." Outside, the storm intensified, wind whipping snow and ice through the open door as Jasper continued his desperate struggle against the catch pole. Maisie's crying grew weaker, her tiny chest heaving with the effort to breathe in the chaos and cold. Harlan felt tears freeze on his cheeks as he watched them drag his daughter's protector away, knowing that Delilah had finally found a way to tear their family apart. Not through the courts, but through the cold machinery of rules and regulations, wielded like a weapon in the dark of a winter storm. The struggle continued to escalate in the cramped room. As one of the officers yanked harder on the catch pole, Jasper's desperate movements caused them to stumble backward. Their shoulder slammed into the tall metal storage shelf against the wall, loaded with Maisie's supplies and medical equipment. Time seemed to slow as the shelf wobbled, then tipped. Harlan lunged to push it away, but the heavy metal frame caught him across the shoulders, driving him to the floor. Pain exploded through his back as boxes and equipment rained down around him. "Help!" he gasped, pinned beneath the weight. Maisie's oxygen tank rolled away, the tube pulling free from her mask. In that moment of chaos, Jasper seized his chance. With strength born of desperation, he twisted violently, snapping the catchpole's rope. Before anyone could react, he launched himself at the window beside Maisie's crib. The sound of shattering glass filled the room as Jasper crashed through, shards slicing into his golden-brown coat. Blood dripping from dozens of cuts, Jasper scrambled back inside through the broken window. The HOA officers backed away as the dog, now truly looking wild, clawed his way into Maisie's crib. Instead of attacking, though, Jasper pressed his bleeding body against Maisie's chest, his warmth enveloping her struggling form. Then he threw back his head and howled, a sound of such primal desperation that it seemed to pierce the very heart of the storm outside. "Get that animal away from her," the female officer shouted, but no one dared approach the crib. Harlan struggled beneath the shelf, his vision blurring with tears of pain and helplessness. "Please," he begged, "call 911. She can't breathe." Jasper's howls continued, echoing through the neighborhood. The sound carried through the ice and wind, a desperate call for help that couldn't be ignored. From somewhere nearby, a siren began to wail. Patterson finally snapped out of his shocked stupor. "I'm calling emergency services," he said, pulling out his phone with shaking hands. Harlan could only watch, trapped and useless, as Maisie's lips turned a darker shade of blue. Jasper never stopped howling, the sound becoming more ragged but no less urgent. The dog's blood matted his fur, but he remained steadfast, pressing against Maisie as if trying to will his own strength into her tiny body. Minutes that felt like hours crawled by, until finally, blessed voices called from the front door. "Emergency services! In here!" Patterson shouted. "The baby's not breathing!" EMTs flooded the room, quickly assessing the scene. Two of them lifted the shelf off Harlan, while others rushed to Maisie. Jasper allowed them to approach but refused to leave the crib, watching intently as they worked on the baby. "Get a pediatric mask," one EMT called. "Start oxygen at 2 liters. Harlan tried to stand but collapsed, his legs refusing to support him. From the floor, he watched the medical team work on his daughter, their movements swift and sure. Jasper's howls had finally stopped, replaced by soft whimpers as he observed every move they made. "We've got a pulse," an EMT announced. "Breathing's starting to stabilize." Relief swept through the room like a physical force. As color returned to Maisie's cheeks, Jasper finally allowed himself to sink down in the crib. His blood-stained fur trembled with exhaustion, but his eyes never left Maisie's face. "We need to transport her to the hospital," the lead EMT said. "The dog needs veterinary attention too." Through his tears, Harlan looked at Jasper, really looked at him. This creature, this guardian angel in fur and flesh, had crashed through glass without hesitation. He'd bled to keep Maisie warm, howled until help arrived, and never once thought of his own safety. In that moment, Harlan understood something profound. Jasper hadn't just saved Maisie's life tonight. He'd shown Harlan what pure love looked like, love that didn't count the cost, that didn't hesitate to bleed, that put another's life above its own. In a world that had seemed so cold and calculated, where even a grandmother could use rules as weapons against her own grandchild, Jasper had restored Harlan's faith in something greater than himself. As the EMTs carefully lifted Maisie onto a stretcher, Jasper tried to stand but collapsed, his strength finally spent. His mission completed, he allowed himself to rest beside the baby he'd sacrificed everything to protect. The fluorescent lights of St. Mary's Hospital cast a harsh glow over the waiting room where Harlan sat, his back stiff from the brace the doctors had fitted him with. His eyes kept darting between the hallway leading to Maisie's room and the corridor to the veterinary wing, where they'd taken Jasper for emergency surgery. Marin's steady presence beside him offered silent comfort as she methodically documented every detail of the night's events in her laptop. Her fingers flew across the keyboard, recording the exact timeline. The HOA's forced entry during a medical emergency, the disruption of Maisie's oxygen setup, and Jasper's desperate intervention. "The security cameras caught everything," Evelyn said, hurrying into the waiting room with her phone held out. She'd insisted on checking the footage from her home security system, which had a clear view of Harlan's front door. "You can see Delilah's car parked down the street before the HOA officers arrived. She orchestrated the whole thing." Marin leaned forward, her professional demeanor cracking slightly as she watched the footage. "This proves premeditation. She deliberately chose a time when the weather was worst, knowing it would cause maximum disruption to Maisie's breathing. The hospital's legal team had already been notified, and they were building a case. Dr. Chen, Maisie's attending physician, had been particularly vocal about the dangerous interference with a medically fragile child's care equipment. "I've got statements from 3 neighbors," Evelyn added, pulling out a small notebook. Her years as a postal clerk had given her an eye for detail that proved invaluable now. They all heard Jasper's howling. Mrs. Rodriguez said she's never heard anything so heartbreaking in all her 72 years. Harlan's hands trembled as he signed another form documenting his daughter's emergency admission. "How's Jasper doing?" he asked, his voice rough with worry. "The vet said he's stable," Marin replied softly. "The glass cuts were numerous but mostly superficial. They're more concerned about the strain on his heart from the prolonged howling. But he's young and strong. They expect him to make a full recovery." A social worker appeared in the doorway, her expression sympathetic but professional. "Mr. Pike, we've documented all of Maisie's injuries and the circumstances that led to them. I want you to know that Child Protective Services will be investigating Mrs. Voss's actions, not yours. The evidence clearly shows she endangered her granddaughter by interfering with prescribed medical care." The irony wasn't lost on anyone. Delilah's attempt to prove Harlan an unfit parent had instead exposed her own dangerous obsession with control. Her carefully maintained facade of concerned grandmother had crumbled in one ice-stormy night. Throughout the morning, more support arrived. Patterson, the HOA officer who'd called emergency services, came to give his statement. His hands still shook as he described how Jasper's desperate howling had cut through his trained detachment, making him realize something was terribly wrong. "I've worked HOA enforcement for 15 years, he said, his voice thick with emotion. "But I've never seen anything like that dog's devotion. He wasn't being aggressive. He was trying to save that baby's life." Around noon, the veterinarian brought welcome news. Jasper had come through surgery successfully. They'd removed several glass shards and stitched up the worst cuts, but his prognosis was excellent. "He's already trying to get up," the vet reported with a small smile. "We had to sedate him because he keeps trying to find his way back to Maisie." The story spread quickly through the hospital. Nurses stopped by to offer support, many with tears in their eyes, after hearing about the stray dog who'd crashed through glass to save a baby. Several brought treats for Jasper, creating a small stockpile for when he'd be well enough to enjoy them. By evening, local news stations had picked up the story. Security footage of Jasper's desperate break through the window, followed by his life-saving vigil over Maisie, touched hearts across the city. The contrast between the dog's pure devotion and Delilah's cold manipulation couldn't have been clearer. "Your mother-in-law's lawyer called," Marin told Harlan quietly as they watched Maisie sleeping peacefully in her hospital bed. "They want to discuss dropping the custody suit. Apparently, Delilah's board members are distancing themselves after seeing the footage. No one wants to be associated with someone who would endanger a child's life just to prove a point." Harlan nodded, too exhausted for words. His back ached, but he refused to leave his daughter's side. The monitors showed her breathing was stable now, her oxygen levels strong and steady, just like Jasper's loyalty, unwavering and true. In the veterinary wing, Jasper slept off his sedation, his bandaged body finally getting the rest it needed. The staff had placed his bed near a window where the morning sun would warm him. One nurse taped a sign to his door that read, "Hero Dog," and somehow that simple title said everything that needed to be said. The family courtroom buzzed with tension as Harlan's lawyer approached the bench, carrying a thick folder of evidence. Judge Martinez, a seasoned veteran of family court, leaned forward with interest as security footage from that desperate night played on the courtroom screen. "Your Honor," the lawyer began, "what you're witnessing is not just a dog's heroic act, but the deliberate endangerment of a medically fragile child by her grandmother, Mrs. Delilah Voss." The footage showed everything in stark detail. The enforcer's arrival during the ice storm, Delilah's car parked across the street, watching. Then came the chaos, and finally Jasper's desperate break through the window to reach Maisie. Dr. Chen took the stand next, his testimony clear and damning. "Maisie Pike suffers from silent apnea, a potentially fatal condition. The dog, Jasper, has demonstrated an extraordinary ability to detect these episodes before our medical equipment can. Removing him wasn't just cruel, it was dangerous." Delilah sat rigid in her expensive suit, her diamond brooch glinting under the fluorescent lights as medical records were entered into evidence. Her face tightened as Marin presented Jasper's newly granted medical alert certification, complete with documentation of his successful alerts during the trial period. Judge Martinez reviewed each document carefully, her expression growing sterner by the minute. When she looked up, her gaze fixed directly on Delilah. "Mrs. Voss," she said, her voice sharp with disapproval, "this court finds your actions not only reckless but potentially criminal. You deliberately interfered with prescribed medical care, endangering your granddaughter's life in the process." The judge turned to address the HOA representatives. "Furthermore, I am ordering an immediate medical exception to your pet restrictions. This animal has proven himself essential to this child's well-being and safety." With a decisive rap of her gavel, she continued, "The custody petition is hereby void. Mr. Pike has demonstrated exemplary care for his daughter under difficult circumstances. Mrs. Voss, you are ordered to cease all harassment and interference with this family, or face serious consequences." Harlan's shoulders sagged with relief as the judge's words rang through the courtroom. Beside him, Marin squeezed his hand, while Evelyn wiped away tears of joy. The battle was finally over. David had defeated Goliath, and a faithful dog's love had helped truth prevail over power. The winter sunlight streamed through freshly repaired windows as Harlan carried Jasper up the front steps of their home. The dog's bandaged paw left tiny spots of snow-white gauze fibers on Harlan's jacket, but he didn't mind. Behind them, Marin balanced Maisie's carrier and a bag full of medical supplies. "Easy now, buddy," Harlan murmured as he lowered Jasper onto his new plush bed near Maisie's crib. The dog's tail wagged weakly, but his eyes immediately found the baby, watchful as ever. Over the following weeks, their little house transformed. Where silence had once filled the spaces between Maisie's coos and Harlan's quiet footsteps, there was now the gentle click of Jasper's nails on hardwood and the soft conversations between Harlan and Maren during her frequent visits. Maren came by almost daily, officially to check Maisie's breathing monitors and Jasper's healing progress. But Harlan noticed how she lingered over cups of coffee at the kitchen table, how her smile softened when she watched him with Maisie. Her medical expertise blended seamlessly with genuine care for their makeshift family. "You're doing great with the bandage changes," she told Harlan one evening, kneeling beside Jasper's bed. The dog's limp was improving, though he still favored his right side where the glass had cut deepest. "He's healing faster than expected." "He's got good reason to," Harlan replied, watching as Jasper pulled himself up and hobbled over to check on Maisie, who was playing on her blanket nearby. The baby squealed with delight, reaching for her faithful guardian. The house felt different now, lived in, protected. Photos appeared on walls that had been bare for too long. Maren brought cheerful curtains for the windows, and toys began to accumulate in corners. Even the air seemed warmer, filled with possibility instead of worry. Jasper's devotion never wavered. Despite his injury, he maintained his vigilant watch over Maisie, his ears perking up at the slightest change in her breathing. But now there was peace in his guard duty, a quiet confidence that matched the newfound security in Harlan's stance. Together they had built something precious from the broken pieces of their past. Not just a home, but a family, bound together by love, trust, and the unshakable loyalty of a dog who had chosen them that frozen night so many months ago. The seasons had turned from winter's bite to spring's gentle warmth. Sunlight filtered through lace curtains, casting delicate patterns across Maisie's nursery floor. At 18 months old now, she slept peacefully in her crib, her dark curls framing her cherubic face. Beside her, as always, lay Jasper, his golden brown head resting protectively over her heart. The sight never failed to move Harlan. He stood in the doorway, watching his daughter's chest rise and fall in perfect rhythm with her guardian's breathing. The monitoring equipment still blinked quietly in the corner, but it was Jasper's steady presence that gave him true peace of mind. Maren's gentle touch on his arm drew his attention. She'd just finished reviewing Maisie's latest medical charts, but Harlan knew that wasn't the only reason for her visit anymore. The warmth in her clear blue eyes told a different story. "Look at them," she whispered, leaning against his shoulder. "He hasn't moved an inch in over an hour." Harlan smiled, wrapping an arm around her waist. "Never does during nap time. It's like he's timing her sleep cycles." The slight limp in Jasper's gait had become barely noticeable, though the scars beneath his fur told the story of his sacrifice. Every now and then, during thunderstorms, he'd favor that right side, but it never stopped him from his self-appointed duties. "Remember when you were ready to take him to the shelter?" Maren's voice carried a gentle, teasing note. "Seems like a lifetime ago," Harlan admitted, his voice soft with gratitude. "I thought I was just giving him shelter for one night. Instead, he gave us everything." Through the window, spring flowers bobbed in the afternoon breeze. The house had transformed from a place of mere survival to one filled with life and love. Crayon drawings decorated the refrigerator, and Jasper's toys shared space with Maisie's blocks on the living room floor. In the crib, Maisie stirred slightly. Before either adult could move, Jasper's ears twitched, and his eyes opened, alert but calm. He waited, watching her breathing pattern return to its peaceful rhythm before settling back down, his muzzle gentle against her chest. Harlan felt Maren's hand slip into his, their fingers intertwining naturally. This was their family now, unexpected, unconventional, and absolutely perfect. A single father, a dedicated medical professional, a miracle baby, and the stray dog who had brought them all together with his unwavering loyalty and love. As the afternoon light painted the nursery in soft gold, Jasper's steady breathing matched Maisie's own, their hearts beating in a synchronized rhythm that spoke of protection, trust, and unbreakable bonds. In this quiet moment, watching over the sleeping pair, Harlan and Maren shared a look of profound gratitude for the faithful guardian who had chosen them that frozen night, and in doing so, had given them all a second chance at family. Thanks for watching. If any part of this story lingered with you, consider subscribing. I'll be here again tomorrow, sharing another tale that speaks to the soul.